Hey everyone, today I'm going to share with you how I make my 100% whole wheat bread in a bag. This recipe makes an easy sandwich bread or a really easy focaccia bread using 100% whole grain whole wheat flour. First, just measure 2 3/4 of a cup of whole wheat flour into a Ziploc bag. Then add 1 teaspoon of salt to the bag. Then you're going to set the bag aside and start with your yeast. You're going to use 1 teaspoon of sugar combined in a jar with 2 1/4 of a teaspoon active dry yeast. Combine that with some warm water. Make sure the water's not too hot. You want the water to be about between 90 and 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Measure 1/2 cup of water with the yeast and sugar, then whisk it really well until there are no more clumps. Set this aside for 10 minutes. It should foam up and become nice and bubbly and almost double in size. If it doesn't do that, that means your yeast is not active and you need to get new yeast. Then you're going to add another 1/2 cup of water. Next, you're going to add 1/4 cup of olive oil into the bag with the flour and the salt. Then you're going to close the bag up and thoroughly toss the olive oil together with the flour and the salt. If you're like me and you really don't like getting your hands really messy when working with dough, this is an ideal recipe because you're basically just putting everything into this Ziploc bag and you don't even have to use a utensil to stir anything. Now you're ready to add your yeast and water mixture into the flour and olive oil mixture. Then you're going to close your bag nice and tightly and start to knead. You're going to knead the dough in the bag for 5 minutes. It should start to absorb all of the liquid into the flour and turn into basically a ball of dough. Let your dough rise for 1 hour in a warm area. I like to set my oven to the proofing temperature, which is about 80 degrees. Then after your dough has doubled in size for 1 hour, then you're going to shape your dough into your desired baking dish. But first, preheat your oven to 450 degrees. If you're making the focaccia, you're going to just add a little bit of olive oil or use parchment paper to line your baking dish. Then you're going to press your dough into the baking dish and place any toppings that you want on top of the dough. Then you're going to let your baking dish rest for another 30 minutes before baking. I like to top my focaccia with olives, garlic powder, dried basil, dried oregano. You can also do sliced onions, salt, tomatoes, or any type of topping that you prefer. You can even use this focaccia as like a pizza dough. If you're making the sandwich bread, you're going to form your dough into a ball, and then you're going to place it into a parchment-lined Dutch oven. A Dutch oven is basically a large baking dish that has a lid. The lid helps keep steam in while baking, so this is really important if you want to have a nice crusty loaf. The dough for the sandwich bread can rest in the bowl that you used to rise the dough in, and you're going to preheat your cast iron Dutch oven in the oven so that it can get nice and hot. When it's nice and hot and you're ready to bake your bread, go ahead and dump it into the parchment lined Dutch oven and then cut 2 slits on the top. Then place the lid on top of the Dutch oven and put it straight into the preheated oven and bake for 25 to 30 minutes. The bread is ready to remove from the oven when it's nice and brown on the top. Let the bread cool completely before slicing. This focaccia bread is so delicious. It's moist, it's tender. It's really great for as a side dish, or you can also use it for sandwiches. And like I said earlier, this dough is really great even for pizza. And this dough, if you're making it for the sandwich bread, is so great because it's really hearty. It's packed with whole grains. It doesn't have any weird additional ingredients in it. And it really holds up very nicely for slicing, toasting, and all kinds of applications. If you like baking exclusively with whole grains like I do, check out my organic, whole grain, vegan baking playlist. I share all kinds of recipes made with 100% whole grains.